it's nice to meet you. I saw the movie a few weeks ago, and yeah, it's a really interesting movie, and it's a kind of it's got kind of movie that just from the title, I assumed it was based on a book, and it's not based on a book. And I also assumed that I assumed you were both from Ireland and you were Irish, these Irish women who put together, and that's also not true. So maybe you could tell me the real story of how this came together.
Sure.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's funny that you say it feels like a book because our screenwriter is also a novelist.
Oh.
And he has a very prose-like style of writing, which is kind of the first things that really struck us about the script. But the script came to us through Fodhla, Cronin, O'Reilly, who is our producer. And, we read it and we're just so in love with it.
Yeah, we first read it early draft in like 2018. And we developed the screenplay along with Fodhla and Shane for the next 2.5 years. And so that kind of was the joy of this, was getting to play and Shane's like specificity as a writer. He and Fodhla both grew up in Kerry. Fodhla's family are fishermen and her brother's an oyster farmer. Like, this is a world that they know very, very well. And so it already came with that like cultural specificity. And yeah, we went to Ireland. We went back and forth and spent time over there, just kind of like studying the landscape and reading the draft and doing cards, and kind of it all folded together. But it was very much always about like that authenticity of place and a very site specific film.
Which is probably why I felt that you might have come from a small town,
Yeah.
fishing village yourself. I was like, it was so authentic that I was just like, wow, this is not this means you spend generations of learning how to do, not just and I know you directed The Fits. Had you two worked together before, or?
Yeah, the Fits is not the beginning. The Fits is in the middle. So
Okay.
we've been collaborating in different ways for almost a decade now. And our first collaboration was, I was a camera operator on a film that Celia ended up cutting, a nonfiction film called Northern Light, directed by Nick Benjen. And then from then I was producing, and Celia came on as an editor on a film that we worked on called Ballet 422 that was directed by Jody Lee Lipes. And during that, when we were working very closely with New York City Ballet, was like the seed of The Fits. So we've been kind of like musing and collaborating and growing together as artists. And The Fits, we also wrote the screenplay together with our producer Lisa Kuroff. So out of The Fits, we started to, we were questioning like, how can this grow? What is that like truth for us in terms of like how we want to work? And we knew we wanted to write together, and very quickly for ourselves, we were referring to ourselves as a directing team, and we were, writing stuff to direct together. And then this came to us, and we felt like this is the one that we want to do as our directing team debut.
Yeah, Saela, what was about the script or story that interested you originally? Like, what got to get you involved?
This script sorry. Yeah, I think kind of like what Anna was saying, we were writing together and honestly exploring themes that we found within this film on the page. And so yeah, we were just so passionate about the ideas that were being explored. And I think specifically Aileen as a character and her choice to lie to protect her son, but ultimately harm this other woman that she's close with. And then the way in which it examines that decision, it's not about it's not a procedural that's like laying down evidence for you to decide whether or not he did or didn't do it, but it's really focused on Aileen's kind of psychological journey and her kind of grappling with the choice she makes, and ultimately realizing, that she made the wrong choice.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like, In the Bedroom, like a Todd Fields type movie, like drama, very, very heavy drama, and very much leaving up to the viewer to decide, what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's false, all those things.
Well, a lot of times it's those are unanswerable questions, or there's different versions for every single character, of what is right, or what, those questions are in a lot of ways unanswerable. And so, like, we are trying to make cinema that's posing questions, not answering them, is something that is a mantra that we have.
Great. I mean, there's a lot of elements to the story. First of all, the village, the oyster farming, harvesting. But let's talk about the cast. Talk about the casting first, because obviously Emily Watson is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I can think of anyone else who could do this role better. I'm sure someone could, but I mean, she was just amazing in it. How'd you go to her? Like, how do you approach her and sell her on this?
I mean, we sent the script, and we had a director's treatment, and we wrote her a letter. I mean, really, like, it was the ask of asks. It was, I mean, like you said, we were sold in our hearts on Emily, and it was a lot of pressure to go out, and then to receive that, I'm interested, let's have a conversation, I think was one of the best highlight days of this whole process, to be like, okay, like this can happen, because you need the strength of a performer like Emily at the heart of this film, and the way that we wanted to tell the story, in the silences, in the cheekbones, in the shoulder, in the breath. Like, Emily delivers that in spades. And we knew, like, when she was on board, that our vision for the film could be realized, because, okay, we can build this around Emily Watson and the skills and her body of work and her instincts as a storyteller. Okay, we can build from that. And it was like, this can happen, that was the day where, like, this can happen in the way we have been holding in our minds.
Did you have any trepidation about any of the aspects of it, even whether it's the story part of it, or even just the, fishing and waiting in the water and all this other stuff that's involved? I mean, she's actually, I think one of our earlier movies, Breaking the Waves, actually had a lot of that in it already.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think she was ready to dive in, head first. Like, she was very excited to kind of learn the process of filleting a fish. She wanted to do that work, and she also really wanted to explore Aileen as a character and understand who she is. And so, yeah, I don't think there was any fear from her. I think it was just like a lot of curiosity that she brought to this role.
And she's spoken about this, and so I feel comfortable bringing it to the conversation, but she's a mother herself. So I think that if there was anything that was like the hardest, was that, because we were in COVID, it meant she had to be away from her family for a significant, all of us had to, really. And that, I think, was I mean, that came up after we had already agreed, but I think it was that was a hard thing to buy in, to say, like, this film is worth that. And we were all very aware of the sacrifices that everybody was making to be here on the set. So, yeah.
Did either of you feel like you needed to learn how to fillet a fish, or learn any of those skills, just to kind of keep that authenticity you wanted?
I think more through observation. We wanted to, the reason we spent a lot of time in Ireland beforehand is because we really wanted to immerse ourselves in the world and understand the rhythms of this place. And so we spent a lot of time on oyster farms and fish factories, really just kind of watching and watching the way that people's like bodies move through these spaces, how you pull the guts out of the fish. I think just as directors, like you're behind the camera and you're watching, so it's always about like thinking about the frame and how you're going to capture those images. And so, I don't know, I personally didn't have the desire to like stick my hand on a bloody fish, but I love the process of watching it, and being struck by the work.
Yeah, I think it's not so much like, you don't have to be technically proficient in it, but you need to understand it deeply. And so some of that is, it's like, if you're going to ask someone to do something, you have to understand what your ask is. And if it's stand over here, you know what that is. But if it's lift that, you have to understand actually what you're asking this body to do. And so, it's really just about understanding it through and through, and bringing in others who are better experts than you,
Yeah.
and knowing that you, like, we are not the experts on fish filleting, so we made sure that we brought in like all of our essays, like that's what they do for a living, they have experience in fish factories, and so we knew that we had to lean on the expertise of others and be students alongside our cast.
But we did throw on waders and get into the
We were in the
cold
water all the time,
a
yeah.
lot. So
Yeah, I think you're both New Yorkers, right? You're both in New York.
yes.
Mhm.
So you know the Metrograph, right? You know the Metrograph Theater
Yes.
downtown. There's like a fish place next door. I don't know what you call it, the fish.
Yeah, yeah.
Fish place next door. I was thought, well, you show the movie there. All I have to do is open the front door and you get the full surrounds.
Well, people keep saying they can smell the film, and I'm like, no, you can't, but yes, you can, you know.
Yeah, so you can. I do want to ask about Paul Mescal too, because I feel like, I mean, I know he was on a really popular British show, and I've never seen it, but I know he's also in like 5 movies this fall, or so he must be, be doing some good stuff. I mean, how do you kind of come to him?
Paul's incredible. Yeah, he's in this Irish series called Normal People, and that is where we saw him and recognized this very like rare and bright talent. And we cast him very soon after that debuted. And so he was, I think this was one of his first film, if not the first film that he signed on to after that production. Yeah, he's just but more than anything, I mean, he has the talent. You that's like the given that you need to like say yes to an actor. But for us, it was more importantly that like who he is as a human, and he's very generous, very, very thoughtful. And we knew that this material is incredibly challenging, and we needed to feel like we could have conversations offset, like we could move into this space and talk to Paul as much as we could, kind of like work together to bring Brian to life. And that was something that like we really connected with him.
Do you also, I mean, in this where we ended up filming this, did you end up like casting any of the locals with any people, non-actors or whatever, who just said, hey, this would be great? I mean, obviously in the fish what's actually, I don't know which is a cannery. I don't know what the fish yeah.
Processing warehouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fish processing warehouse is filled with all locals. And then there are some of the fishermen were also kind of like around the pier doing that work. We cast them, but in terms of main talent, not necessarily like regionally local.
Well, one of the tricky things is that our film is set in Kerry, County Kerry, which is in the west of Ireland, but in the southwest of Ireland. We shot in Donegal, which is in the northwest. There's a very, very different accent. So we are doing a Kerry, our main cast is in an accent that is not the local accent. So there was like regional local casting, but happening in a different part of Ireland, if that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, this film deals on one level with male toxicity, and I'm really curious about like filming in an Irish fishing village, because you kind of, as an American, I kind of always get the impression that those places are just filled with that. There's not like, have you found that when you were working there that's changed, that it's kind of been, maybe they've been affected by the rest of the world in some ways, or?
Could you repeat the question, or?
Yeah, well, I'm just curious about, the fact that it deals with the male toxicity within this village. And I was curious when you like shooting it in an Irish fishing village, whether or not, you experienced any of that, or whether or not you see that what's happening in America and stuff like that is changing other places. I'm assuming, of course, I've never been there.
Like we were very open and transparent about the film that we were making. So the people that signed on to be part of our world and part of that process felt like this was a necessary and urgent story to be told. So I think like the world that we moved in was very supportive and very understanding of the necessity of this film to be made. So it may be our bubble, like in kind of like who we interacted with immediately, but like, we both have existed in the world for decades as women, and it's like, you know, those forces are prevalent everywhere you go, like wherever you go, and they're invisible, and sometimes they're very, very loud, and sometimes they're like completely under the surface, and you know, but they're everywhere, you know, so it doesn't really matter if you're, you know, in a small town in, you know, the most remote part of Ireland, or if you're walking down you know, the street here in Brooklyn. Like these are forces that surround you, and they
come in many shapes.
They come in many shapes. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. No, I know, Annie, you come from camera, and you're an editor, comes from the back of editing. So do you take those duties on when you're directing a film? I mean, do you generally shoot the film yourself? Do you generally lead editor on it yourself, or
In this
for this movie?
film?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we not. We we, you know, we wanted to be in the director's seat and collaborate with people that we admired creatively. And so we had an amazing two amazing editors. And so Jeannie Applegate and Julia Block were our editors. Chase Urban was our DP, and yeah, we trusted them immensely to kind of collaborate with them and execute this vision. So
yeah, I think I get like personally like more like directing camera is almost more fulfilling than what my role when I was shooting or working in camera, because it's an exchange, and we both like fundamentally believe that cinema is collaborative art form. So it's like when we choose those crafts people to collaborate with, we gain so much by it being a conversation with another artist, and like someone is going to challenge your idea, and someone is going to like hear you and translate it back, and that's like, you know, the magic of having a team around you. And there are some places where, sure, you know, doing it exactly how you thought could be great, but most often it's like actually your idea plus another idea that gets you to the finish line.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of directing teams over the years, and I'm always curious about. I mean, and I'm sure that you probably get asked a lot also, like how do you have a way you split duties up, or do you have like it's just always just both of you there all the time, or do you kind of split things up so just one person can focus on one thing and more can get done?
Yeah, for us, we're always there next to each other all the time. It's rare that you find us apart. And in the development of the script, in pre-production, we're always talking about, you know, what is our intention with this scene? What do we want this to look like? What are the ideas we're exploring? And we kind of create, you know, essentially like a beacon that we're moving toward. And we do that with all of our collaborators, so that when we're on set, we're all kind of working toward the same goal. And so, you know, it starts with trust. We trust each other immensely. We believe that we share a lot of the same sensibilities and the same instincts. And so when you're on the set, it makes it really easy to just kind of do the work. And we never, if one of us has, you know, a new idea, which is always going to happen, you have to be flexible on set, like things change. We say like step forward and pursue that idea, and you know, I trust you. And yeah, I think that's just kind of our style of working, and it seemed to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have I mean, do you generally write also? Are you also working on your own screenplays, or either both together or separate?
Yeah.
That you'll direct
We
together?
work together.
We
Yeah,
write together.
We're currently writing a couple of things, and yeah, we're planning to build the body of work for decades to come.
Great. Excellent. Well, hopefully I'll have a chance to talk to you over the next few decades. So,
Yeah.